another breaking piece of information we are getting. This is the IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva pens op-ed on India's G20 presidency. Now, what has she said? At a time when the world is becoming more divided, India is leveraging its G20 presidency to build consensus on issues that transcend national borders, guided by the theme of One Earth, One Family, One Future. Also, India's G20 leadership is helping a fragmented world, argues the IMF Managing Director, and that the international cooperation is the best insurance against both climatic and financial shocks. IMF chief lauds India's leadership ahead of the G20 summit, saying that India has set a high bar for global leadership and that India's presidency helping the fragmented world. It's a clear example of the global solidarity that India has been advocating under the theme of One Family. Now, the theme of G20, if we are to speak of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and this One Earth, One Family, One Future, is something that has been taken up very seriously by the Prime Minister. He has spoken about this at different platforms throughout the year that India has been taking presidency over the G20. And we have Siddhant Mishra joining us in this conversation again. Siddhant, coming to you. You know, this theme that we are speaking of, the One Earth, One Family, One Future, if we are to speak of it in the context of when India has come out to become the voice of the global South, how does it further that narrative for India?
Well, absolutely, and in fact, this piece has been penned down by IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, and perhaps this is the IMF Managing Director appreciating India's role and perhaps also highlighting that how India is in a way walking a tightrope, building consensus where word is largely divided into blocks. So in her piece she writes that at a time when the world is becoming more divided, India is leveraging its G20 presidency to build consensus. Second point that she highlights is India's G20 leadership is helping a fragmented world, argues the IMF Managing Director. International cooperation is the best insurance against both climate and financial shocks. Even she also says that India has set a high bar for global leadership, India's presidency helping the fragmented world. So even the world organizations also understand the role and perhaps how India has been made to walk a tightrope to build a consensus, to forge consensus between the fragmented world. And right before this, my senior colleague Aman was highlighting that how a World Bank report talks about digital public infrastructure and how the financial inclusion have gone up to by 80%, which wouldn't have been possible in such a short span of time. Like that only, IMF is quite satisfied with the kind of work India has been doing, especially with G20, the way India has put forth the agenda for the countries from global South, the developmental, growth-oriented, human-centric, inclusive, decisive, sustainable agenda which India has put forth. So even IMF understands the situation of India. At the same time, with this situation, how the India has outperformed with regard to preparing the agenda for the G20 and building the consensus. Also, when we say about Jan Bhagidari, human-centric growth, one thing I would like to highlight, till now we have seen American capitalist growth. We also saw China's communist growth. India's growth is about human-centric growth, and that is perhaps what Prime Minister highlighted while speaking to our sister group Money Control. So India's growth is something which world is looking at. World wants to collaborate with India's growth, and when world needs India, India is perhaps one of the first countries to help other country. Now when it comes to the earthquake relief measures, the teams which were sent to Turkey, vaccination Maitri, the vaccinations were sent to countries from the global South. That's how India saved lives. Then when it comes to digital public infrastructure, we already have trans-border payment mechanism with Singapore. We are working to develop the same mechanism with the countries in Gulf, including Qatar, UAE, Bahrain. the talks are still going on. So that is how India is contributing. First, India has created something, digital public infrastructure. India has proven its success. Now the World Bank appreciates, acknowledges India's digital public infrastructure. Now India is ready to share it with the world, so that the other countries from the global south can also have financial inclusion the way India had in last 5 years. So it is tremendous, and it is something which is unprecedented. But despite that,
Absolutely,
India
Siddharth.
achieved it, and that makes India, and that perhaps sets the tone for
Right.
India's presidency, that how India wants other developing countries, other countries from the global south
Right.
also to grow. The India grew in last 5 years.